Male pattern baldness is the most common type of hair loss in men, and by the age of 50, about 50% of men have some degree of male pattern baldness. By the age of 70, 70% have it. So basically, it depends on your genetics and the presence in men of testosterone. So those two things, when combined, cause the hair follicle to become much smaller than it previously was. So those big long hairs that you have become smaller and smaller, and eventually become so small that they're microscopic and you can't see them. So that leads to a bald appearance. We actually studied men who were balding, and we looked at their scalp from the balding area and the non-balding area, and we did a detailed genetic analysis of the cells and looked at the genes that were present in the balding area compared to the non-balding area. Essentially, we showed that a prostaglandin, a protein, was elevated in the bald scalp of men and that it inhibited hair growth. So we identified a target for treating male pattern baldness. We published our results in Science Translational Medicine, and we found a gene called prostaglandin D synthase. That's an enzyme that was found at higher levels in the bald scalp compared to the normal scalp. And enzymes create products, and the product of the PGDS enzyme is something called PGD2. And it turns out that that is a prostaglandin, a protein that when we studied its effects on hair growth, both in the lab and on mice, we showed that this protein inhibited hair growth. The way this works, this protein has to attach to something called a receptor on the cell, and it sends a message into the cell telling it to do its job, which in this case is to inhibit hair growth. So we discovered the exact receptor that this protein is working through. And drug companies are very good at identifying drugs that inhibit receptors or activate receptors. So there are actually compounds available that already target this pathway. And they're in development by several different companies. And none of them are being used topically, but the nice thing about dermatology and hair loss in general is that you can take compounds that maybe were being used as a pill and then put them in a topical formulation, and when you apply those to the scalp, then you would inactivate that receptor and allow the hair to grow. We're very interested in finding out whether the same holds true in female pattern hair loss. We don't really have any data on that at the moment, but we're hoping that women would benefit as well. If you look at just in the last year, we've gone from finding normal stem cells in the scalp to now identifying an inhibitor of hair growth. So the next step would be to screen for compounds that affect this receptor and try to also find out whether blocking that receptor actually reverses the balding, or does it just prevent balding? So that's an important question that will take a while to figure out, but we'll have to partner with probably a company or generate more research funding so we can answer that question.